This week's LC Player of the Week in our first week of the season is Kimberly Tinsley of the Royals. Kimberly had a great game on Saturday, and even though she had not enough people on our team to substitute in for her, she played the whole game, and her coach said she did fantastic. She pressed the ball up the field, even while she was tired, and set just a great example for her teammates and everybody to see. Kimberly, great job. You are LC Player of the Week.
This week's Coach of the Week, sponsored by Lasso Work Cedar, goes to Kelly Henson of the Strikers. Kelly is a returning coach, and her main priority this season was for her kids to have fun. And she demonstrated that in the 2 weeks of practice and the first game by just presenting herself in a calm way that provided confidence not only to her players, but also her families at large. And there was a ton of fun at hand. So Kelly, great job. You've accomplished your goal on week 1. The kids had fun, and you guys got the win. You are this week's Coach of the Week. All right, welcome to episode 20 with Winning with the Home Team. We just completed our very first soccer game this season. I was on the small fields with the 4 and 5-year-olds, and that was a blast. It was so much fun. And Todd, you were on the big fields?
Yep, on the big fields. It was fall soccer, but fully in summer.
Yes, it was so hot.
Yeah. Steamy. But we had a great time. I think the kids had a great time. It was a good week 1.
Yeah, and it was kind of baptism by fire for you,
At
right?
least fire and water.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a lot going on that big field.
This was my first swim through soccer at all. And so my first week of game days. And I learned a lot. This week. But it was good.
Earlier today, you said that as you were painting the fields on Friday, you were like, oh, soccer season.
Yeah.
Because it was so hot on Friday.
It was.
It just seemed like the sun was incredibly close to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know the rhythms of the sun or how close it was, but it was hot.
I know it was hot. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
You did a great job.
It was fun.
Again, I'm so glad that you're here. And today we have a guest, Mr. Cris Tule. Cris, what's up?
How you doing?
I'm good. So we know Cris from past soccer seasons in the spring when he's come and coached with us. And so I've known Cris for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Cris, how are you?
Doing great. A bit tired like y'all, not because of the sports games this weekend, but just coaching elsewhere. So it's been good though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, where are you at?
So just started a few new jobs. Have a few new hats. I'm the director of student life, so planning events for the students, making sure they're not bored. I also am the head cross country coach and the assistant soccer coach at Arlington Baptist University. And so y'all kind of are where I'm announcing that for the first time. I don't think the school's announced it yet, so y'all get the inside scoop.
Very cool, man. Well, we had some of your guys out this Saturday, and a girl out reffing. And we heard nothing but great things about them as refs.
That's
I know that I worked with, I think it was Miguel.
Yeah.
And was it Liam?
I believe so.
Yeah, Liam. And they were so pleasant. They had a great job. They did a great job. And who did you work with?
A lot of them.
Yeah.
But I will say that you mentioned the female. Haley was there, and we got compliments on her. Like,
That's awesome.
It was so nice to have a female there mixed in too. It was really cool. And to a person, like, their attitude was fantastic, which is probably a testament to some influence you have on them.
Oh yeah.
So between you and Coach Cross, I'm sure you guys do a really good job with those kids. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely appreciative. So it's Coach Cross, Coach Witt, and myself, and I learned a lot from both of them. Just because I mean, like you mentioned, they're the embodiment of a lot of good, not just soccer things, but Christ-like mannerisms. So that's always good.
That's cool. Well, Cris, this week our players and coaches, they're going to be covering the virtue of respect. We use the word grit this season, gratitude, respect, impact, and toughness. And for the next 2 weeks is respect. And Jesus said in Matthew 7, verse 12, he said, it's kind of the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And specifically, what our players are talking about the next 2 weeks is just respecting ourselves by never giving up and working hard, and how in doing so, we're showing respect to our team.
Yeah.
So, Cris, tell us a little bit about you as a child, and if there was any adversity that you kind of had to walk through growing up.
Oh yeah, definitely. So that's a really good one. I mean, the way you said, you got to respect your team by not giving up. That's huge. And so, as far as adversity, I can go on and on, but more specifically, growing up, I for most of my life had just a single mom. My mom kind of came through and stepped up and did a phenomenal job. We never missed a meal. And so the reason it was just her was because growing up, she was in a possession of domestic violence. And so my dad would, beat her. And I definitely was in a position of seeing things no kid should have to see and kind of having to grasp concepts a kid shouldn't have to even be battling with. And so that put a lot of pressure on me and a lot of weight on me growing up, especially as I got older and started to fully become a little bit more conscious of like, all right, this is what this is what that is. And it definitely took its toll, whether it was on the soccer field later on in my life or just in life. And it definitely was the defining factor on, at first, my battle with turning to God and turning to Jesus, but then more so the kind of push that ended up leading to my salvation.
Yeah.
So on that note, like you talk about the domestic violence situation, which is terrible, but you have children that are coming out to soccer practice or a soccer game that endure that during the course of their week, right? So looking back on that, if you're that child and you're coming out there, what advice would you give to our coaches on how to handle those kids? Because you don't always know what's going on behind closed doors, right?
That's true.
So is that something that when you look back on your life when you were that young, were you there because it was an outlet? Did it matter how the coach treated you when you got there? What did you expect?
So for me specifically, soccer has always been the outlet. It really didn't matter who or what. I was going to be there, one, because I loved the game, but two, because it was one of the few ways I had to kind of just forget about everything. I would later learn that soccer's not enough. The only thing that's enough is Jesus. As far as advice, as y'all know, I also coach club soccer. So I have, I think, between 6 to 11-year-olds. And so based off my experience, I think it'll be 4 years in the spring. My advice to coaches is really just to make sure you're always positive. You definitely on the youth level want to be a coach that builds players up and not one that builds them down. And so a lot of what that means is, for some, it might just be their only outlet and they're not really caring about who. It's really just, I'm here to play soccer. I'm here to have fun. And so recognizing that you have to create an environment, one, that they're having fun, but two, that you're instilling values through seed planting. So you'll have moments where it's a little bit more direct, like, hey, if you're not first in this run, you got to do extra. But also indirectly, like, setting up an opportunity for one of them to help a teammate, stuff like that. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And I hear in your voice when you talk about your mom, I can hear the tenderness you have for your mom.
Definitely.
And she, I'm guessing, is somewhat of a hero for you.
Oh, yeah.
So was she going to your games as a young child?
Oh, yeah.
And so she was very supportive of you.
Oh, yeah. I started off at club at a young age, which to this day astounds me because of the prices.
Yeah.
She definitely worked hard and for as long as she could to keep me in that environment. And she was definitely there through high school and then as many college games as she could, given the fact that we're out of state a lot of the time.
Man, what a lesson that is, for us as parents we don't have to be the greatest parents in the world. We don't have to have it all figured out, but just showing up.
Presence.
And being present.
Presence is
it
key.
makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I think I know a little bit about your story enough to, probably, question you. Graduated high school in 2019.
Yes.
2019. And that was in the area, right? And so, for a young man who, soccer is the outlet, talk about, your transition from high school soccer to ABU. And I think that you were on the first team that ABU ever had. Is that right?
That is correct.
So talk about like expectations and where they met and, how did you get used to that next level of soccer?
Yeah. So, first program in ABU's history was in 2019 for soccer. And the difference between high school and college is pretty much the difference anytime you move up in level. In high school, depending on the area, the level is either really, really high, really, really low, or a mix. And so you can get away with not being in like full shape. You can get away with just little things here and there. And then what I noticed really quickly on the college level is you're dealing with more athletes than you're dealing with student athletes. And obviously, by default, everyone's a student athlete, but you have people that take their craft a little bit more seriously. And so I was excited because at the time, there's this player called Carlos Vela formerly from the Mexico national team, who was starting a team out in LA called LAFC, and it was going to be a new team in the MLS. And so I was kind of mirroring that a lot. And so as far as expectations, I had a lot of fun my freshman year. It was difficult just because we had a coach and a full roster. I think it was the summer before season started. So leading into that August, he resigned for whatever reason. A lot of players left. A coach by the name of Coach Vasquez took the job last second, caught everyone up. And when I spoke with him, he won me over just off of his vision, his excitement for the game. And so already it was an interesting experience and definitely a setup for challenges because we had about 8 soccer players that were recruited, and then everyone else was filling in from like baseball, basketball, and we were pretty fortunate that these guys had played soccer before, so it was definitely a fun but challenging experience.
Yeah, yeah. Those, when I think about, first of all, I'm not a college athlete, so congratulations to you. When I think about moving on to that next level, I would anticipate just the expectation of, I'm good enough to go on to that next level. Did you guys have a winning season?
On paper, no. We did win like maybe 3 out of 9, 8 games, but we definitely suffered a lot of defeats and some heavy ones as well, being a new team and no experience. And then I think we got to the semifinal of our region and lost about 4-0, which is a very comfortable lead for the other team just off of experience. Right. I wouldn't call it a winning season, but it would definitely a season of growth, if anything, for the team.
Yeah, that's good.
So fast forward a little bit so you as a freshman, things were going well, at least individually for you, right? And then after your freshman year, take me through that.
Yeah, so I was very excited going into my sophomore year because, I had put up a few stats my freshman year, played every second of every game, which was just through the grace of God. I was able to be lucky enough to say as a freshman, I played every game. And going into my sophomore year, I worked really hard through the summer. COVID happened, March of 2020. Yeah. So that was an interesting challenge, especially.
How did that play out?
I personally didn't feel the full effect of it because if anything, it just gave me more time to be home with my family. But I definitely used it as an opportunity of like, all right, I felt like I had a good start. Let me work as hard as I can to have an even better second year. And so unfortunately, the start of my sophomore year, I started off with a pulled quad, which only set me back about a week. And then when I started getting a run of games, getting my fitness back up after that injury, I suffered a pretty severe concussion that put me about 3 months out, maybe a little less. And so that kind of ended my season. I missed the regional tournament that year. And it definitely hit me harder than I thought it would. I've always prided myself on not being injury prone, not suffering through injuries. And so to have not just 2, but have one that was that severe. When I came back mentally, just as an athlete, like always, like, all right, I'm going in, I'm going to work hard. But for whatever reason, it was out of my control how I came back. I just wasn't as confident as much as I tried to push myself to be. And I was probably the first time in my life on a team that I felt like the worst player on a team, whereas before I was always either a captain or one of the guys. And so that was definitely an interesting.
So I'm gonna stop you there for a second and ask you a question about that because we talked about at the beginning, she mentioned respect, right? And how we treat others and that kind of thing. But this is an interesting point. So at that point, that's a pretty low spot for you because when I hear you say things like, I felt like I was the weak link on the chain, basically, how do you respect yourself in that situation?
It's interesting because my mindset was always anywhere I'd go, regardless of level, is like I'm the best and I'm going to prove it. And so when I found myself with that mindset, but in a situation where for one reason or the other, I couldn't perform to that mindset, it was definitely very hard to deal with. And so I had, just a lot of sleepless nights thinking about that situation. And so as far as respecting yourself, I think the best thing you can do in hindsight, looking back on it, is that specifically was just because of the lingering effects of the concussion and the injury and the lack of confidence of not wanting to get that hurt again. In hindsight, I mean, a lot of what you need to do is healing, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally. And usually you have to do all three. And as an athlete, if you're not doing all three, especially after an injury, it sets you back. And so that in itself creates this kind of lack of self-respect for not fully taking care of yourself, if that kind of makes sense. Because not only are you hurting yourself, you end up by default hurting the team, especially if you're not taking care of yourself. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting because you're really what I'm hearing you say is almost disrespectful to your team to try to push through something like that, not prepare your body, prepare yourself. So you're not only disrespecting yourself because you're not allowing yourself to heal, but it's also that way to your teammates because they need a 100% healthy you.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
As I'm listening to you guys talk, I'm trying to wrap my head around what does that mean for youth sports, or what does that mean for like high school sports, right? So like, for instance, if Colin gets injured and he is out for, a number of weeks, do you guys know what it looks like for Colin to work on himself, or a high school athlete to work on themselves mentally, so that when they're physically ready, they're also mentally ready to engage as well?
Yeah, like we just went through that this past year, this past summer, because he had elbow issues and he's a pitcher and shortstop, right? And so what happened is he goes out for the first game, and even in warmups, he hurts his elbow. He doesn't pitch the rest of the summer. And it was difficult, more so for a father to watch him than it was for him, probably, because all he wants to do is get in there. And so now all he's able to do is hit. He can hit, and he is pressing and pressing and pressing because that's all he can do. He can't get out on the field. If he has a bad game at the plate, he can't go out on the field, play short or pitch and make up for that.
That quote unquote defines him in that game.
Exactly.
For lack of a better word.
And so he is just pressing, and the more he presses, the worse things get.
Oh, yeah.
And you just...
Because you're not playing with that freedom and that confidence
that
you once had.
Yeah. So you have to figure out a way to mentally take care of yourself. And it wasn't until he reached a point this summer where he was like, I got to let go. I can't keep doing this. And then once that happened, then the hits started coming, and then he starts working his way back into playing in the field a little bit because the elbow's progressing. And by the end of the season, he started to hit a stride. But watching that mental impact of him just getting frustrated, because we tell our athletes all the time, work harder, work harder, work harder. Yeah. And that's all he knows how to do. Yeah. And it's like he has to do a mental reset to be able to take care of himself, like you're talking about.
So do you said Colin said, I just got to let this go.
Yeah.
And then that's when he started to get better.
Yeah.
Do you know specifically what that looked like in his head? Like what did he let go, and how did the freedom to play come back?
So it didn't come until after a lot of tears.
Okay. So emotionally, getting it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to get to the point where...
Are guys allowed to cry? That's a whole different podcast. I'm not going to answer that. That's a whole nother podcast.
That's right. Say Jesus wept.
Yeah, Jesus wept.
Yeah.
But I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like that, you are so tuned in to getting better every day. Like, and suddenly you don't have the physical ability to do that. Yeah. And so your mind and your emotions keep keep hitting that wall. Why won't my body do what it is that I've been trained to do? Oh, yeah. And so to answer your question, at what point do you do that? It's when you get to the point where you are so emotionally drained because you feel like you're letting your team down or you're not reaching your own goals that you just go, something has to change. Oh, yeah. Something has to give. And it was, for him, I know it was that just breakdown of like almost give up, like what else can I do? And then it's just, okay, maybe I do need to take a couple days off. Maybe I do need to push away for a little bit. Maybe I do just need to focus on, instead of getting hits, like maybe it's taking walks and getting on base or, whatever,
Yeah.
just readjusting until you can recalibrate yourself and get back on track.
Right. Yeah. Chris, have you ever had a time like that?
Yeah. So in hindsight, what I wish I would have known, because that's pretty much spot on in what it takes. And so from what essentially helped me, especially when I, came back to play the second time and played that last year under Coach Cross this last year, was, all right, when you do get injured, there's a fine line between pushing through and trying to get back as fast as possible, but also taking care of yourself, kind of like we talked about. And so I learned, especially after the season, given everything that happened, was just you have to let go for a little bit, kind of like you talked about. And so for me specifically, it was, all right, I'm holding on to everything. And it's kind of like that image, I don't know if you've seen it, where you're holding on to a rope to the point where your hand goes numb. And you don't want to let go, but if you let go, you start healing. And so that's what it was for me. I had to let go, and not just let go, but give it to God. And realizing I have this all-powerful creator that has saved me. Why not do what he's asking me? And why not let him guide my steps? Instead of making it harder for myself and getting myself to a point where I'm going to give it to him anyways. Save myself some time and do it now. So that's kind of what it was for me.
So when you're going through that, where's your mom at in all this?
Right in my corner. I mean, the best kind of story I can give you is, so this last season I played ended up being my last, just because mentally I'm ready to move on and have moved on, obviously, now that I'm coaching. And so we lost our regional final. So we finally made it to the first final in program history this last year. And on paper, should have won it all. We can talk about all the injustices that happened in the game that led us to lose it. However, regardless of the fact that we won or lost, I was on the phone with my mom. It just hit me. And just my biggest thing that day was like, I didn't get to call you and tell you I did what I've been working on for 4 years. And in my head, I was like, I let you down. I'm over here trying to show that my name means something and that I'm not defined by what my dad did and all this stuff. And literally what she told me was, I'm proud of you regardless. And I'm over here on the phone crying because, my life's work in my head at that point had led to nothing, because I finally got to the final I'd worked towards getting to since I was 4 years old, and we lose. And kind of like I just said, I'm over here like I let everyone down. I let my sisters down. I let my cousin down, like just different family members that I'd made all these promises to. And it was literally just her on the phone saying, like, hey, I know this is your life. It is just a game. Put it in God's hands. I'm still proud of you. And that I still had a lot of healing to do, but it definitely took a lot of the self-pressure I'd put on myself off.
And to me, it just reinforces to me, as we've gone through the podcast here since 1 through 20, I have slowly started changing my perspective when it comes to youth sports. And part of it is watching Colin go through what he went through this summer, because we got to a point where I was like, dude, like, I love you. I'm your dad. What happens in baseball doesn't mean a hill of beans. And I have said those words before, but never really understood the power behind what they mean. And, being able to say that to my son, which is, I'm certain what your mom was trying to convey to you, is doesn't matter. And we get so wrapped up in this stuff. We talk about respect. You want to respect your children, make sure they understand what the priorities are. You want to respect your spouse or whoever. Like, what are our priorities? And make sure those are spelled out so we don't get tripped up in this stuff.
Yeah, and Chris, just know for a fact that your successes and failures, that doesn't have anything to do with, the way that your dad treated you, like you or your mom for that matter. That's completely separate. You don't owe anybody a single thing. Like you don't have to prove anything. Jesus has already done that for you. And as you guys were talking, I kept thinking about. When Jesus, tells us to give him our burdens, what does he say? Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is light, and cast your burdens down. Whenever, we have something so close-fisted, essentially, are we disrespecting God by keeping it closed-fisted? Like, why not just give it up and say, just like Colin said, and just like I've said when I've gotten so frustrated, okay, like I'm going in circles and I'm not going anywhere fast. So why don't I just give this up? Yeah. But yet, in my mind, I'm questioning, how do we get an 8, 9, or 10-year-old to understand that in a way where it'll benefit them in the future?
Right.
I mean, I think that it's baby steps, right? I think it's just what you already said, one positive affirmation, at a time, and reminding them, like you remind Colin, like, I love you, and it doesn't matter how many points you score, how much time you spend on the court or on the field, or how many wins or losses that you have. Like, that has nothing to do with my love for you.
Yeah.
And that's something that is just, we have to say over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. You're right. As a 48-year-old, I'm still learning that. So how do you tell a 9-year-old that? I don't know.
Exactly.
You reinforce it. Well, you know what? There is an answer to that. And that's exactly what Chris's mom has done, which is be present all the time,
for sure,
every day, and be that in his life that he needs.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
She's definitely a good embodiment of how we're called to be Christ-like, because she, in a sense, laid down her life and all her probably just aspirations that she had to completely commit herself to her 3 kids. And I mean, worked endless jobs, multiple jobs at a time. And I can never recall a moment I didn't have food. So, I mean, I definitely, presence is huge.
So here's the flip side to that. Think about all of those kids. And I keep saying kids, referring to college players, that you're coaching now and all that. But all the way down to our young kids, right? Kids that don't have that in their life. They don't have that presence in their life. Yeah. And we preach to our coaches to be positive role models, right? Because if they don't get that at home, if they don't have a mom like you had, they're coming in and the only thing they're hearing their coaches say is get better, get better, get better. And they're doing drills on top of drills. There's nobody behind the scenes saying, I accept you for who you are. That yes, there are expectations for you to live. Like, I don't want you to grow up to be a little thief, but as far as sports is concerned, so what if you're not a starter? Right? There's nobody behind the scenes. And that becomes where you see a lot of coaches on draft day, NFL draftees get up there and say, man, I just, my coach was awesome because he was like a father figure to me. You see that all the time. That's because they spoke life and positivity into their existence. So so important.
I agree. Yeah.
Cris, who is the one man that did that for you? What your dad didn't do for you?
So the correct answer is Jesus, obviously. As far as one, but I've had an abundance of people. I can't really name one. I mean, like I mentioned, Coach Vasquez and Coach Logan, who helped, start the program. I learned a lot about different things through them, not just through soccer, but life. David Balliot's a good one that I know y'all fought on recently. Coach Cross, Coach Witt.
Is there a common thread that you would say goes across all of those?
I mean, just having, obviously the common thread soccer, but more importantly, I mean, most of, if not all, the men in my life that have shaped me have been in some way, form, or shape affiliated with Jesus Christ, whether it's because they were fully committed to a church or trying to, do their best to be Christ-like, or just because, through Jesus we met. Does that kind of make sense? And so, I mean, there's an abundance of people I can name. I mean, I'm doing an injustice not naming so many, but I mean, there's definitely, I've been very blessed.
Cool. As you coach at ABU and as you also coach at Victory, how do you teach your players to show respect and to never ever give up on their teammates?
No, definitely.
Like, what does that practically look like?
Definitely. So at Victory specifically, just because I've had more time to do it, one of the biggest keywords that you'll find I've kind of driven into their brains. Like if I ask, what do we do? No context. They immediately know to say, keep on going. And so the keep on going aspect is more so, obviously there's the tangible, like, all right, if it's hot, we keep on going. If it's cold, if we're losing, if we're winning. But it's also just a life lesson of, hey, if your teammate's down, what does he need to do? Keep on going, right? Now, you're not trying to push him. You're not trying to be mean to him. You're encouraging him. And so that's kind of how I do it there. As far as the college level, I mean, it's a lot of devotionals that we do and trying to, share the gospel with them, just because the leading by example is always going to be there. We also want to make it fully audible. And so, I mean, we've been in so many passages of scripture over these past few months and last year. And so it's been just different aspects of different things. And that's pretty much, does that answer the question?
Yeah, for sure.
So what's on the radar for Cris? Like, where do you want to go from here?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question. I thought I knew about a year ago,
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
even 5 years ago. And just because I'm at a point now where I stopped being stubborn and just genuinely allowed Christ to move me. I mean, the amount of things he has blessed me with this past year alone have been off of the fact that I've finally allowed myself to just let him be the one to guide my steps. And so my immediate answer is whatever the Lord's will is. If I had to say something, I mean, it's a good question.
You don't have to know the answer
Maybe
right now.
I'll have to get back to you. Maybe in a year.
Sometimes I don't know hour to hour where I'm going to be, so it's okay. Yeah.
Well, you just started at your new job, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning and contentment too
yeah.
that will take place.
Yeah.
Sure.
I've definitely learned to be a little bit more present. So, I mean, there's a quote from a Kung Fu Panda movie, but more recently from
Kung Fu.
Ronaldo.
I love a man who can
Right.
quote Kung Fu Panda.
And so, but more recently, Ronaldo, both had the same sentiment where you have like, yesterday, learn what you can, but it's yesterday. Today is the gift. It's the present.
Yeah.
And don't not worry about the future, but you're setting up the future with what you do today. And so I've definitely been a little bit more present. And a lot of what got me there was being in the scripture every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I'm trying to be focused on what God has for me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does.
That's good.
It does.
Well, you're making an impact, Cris.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for
Appreciate
being
you.
on.
Thank y'all for having me.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yep.
All right. Listen, Cris is one of many at ABU. He represents just an incredible, student body there. And we mentioned the referees and what kind of work they've done. We have kind of partnered with ABU in multiple sports, and just a plug for that university. Great people. You just met one of them, and I'm sure we'll have more than just him on in the near future. So I echo what Katrina said. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to week 20 or episode 20. And we'll be back next week with another amazing topic.
For sure. Yeah.
Because they all are.
I think it's respect again, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Respecting your opponent. So there's the plug.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll see
Thank
you
y'all.
next time.
See ya.